slide goes a long way down, and so far that it actually caught my skin on a couple of occasions here. So what's the solution? One thing one could do is obviously to mill down this one so it doesn't come so far down, but it would have to be all the way from here, like this, or, which I'm going to try not to make it so ugly, mill only the inside, like a millimeter or so up, so that there is not a squeezing space, but plenty of space so the skin can't be squeezed in. Okay, so I put the slide in the mill. Okay, I've cut off about 2 millimeters wide and 3 millimeters deep. Now I'll round the corners and then check if this is enough. Okay, now the part here has been milled down, so it's leaves a space here. See, when I pull the slide now, there is a little space between, so it doesn't catch the skin. Here we have another issue, the safety. It's hard to get up there, so I'm gonna try to round the corner a little bit on that. Here we have the piece. It's this corner that may need some polishing. Now it's a little bit rounded, and we'll see if it will work better. It seems like it's operating much better now. So I'll reassemble the handle and see how it works. Here we notice the other feature. On the handle there is a thing that's coming down. That's a detent that's holding this lever. So when you try to put the safety on, it holds it there and it gets a little bit resistance before it goes up. When you're removing it from safe to fire position, that should not interfere, it just goes straight down. So it's just holding it in the fire position. It makes it a little bit hard to move it to the safe position. We should probably not change that. Okay, it's been reassembled again, and now we test. And it's easy. Okay, now we'll take a good look at the firing, the trigger mechanism. From the trigger here, there is this lever that goes back and pushes here on this lever here. So it bends down and pulls down the sear up here. This thing here prevents it from going down now, and that one is pushed out of the way by the magazine. So let's remove that. See, this one goes down and is pushed away by the magazine. The other end is spring loaded, so if the gun is dropped, it will swing out in the lower end and again lock it up here. So now I'll hold the finger here to prevent it from jumping out of place. Like that it operates. Here is the point where the trigger is attached, and here it's attached to this arm. Down here is a spring that holds this one up. So when the gun fires, the slide goes back, pushes this down, so that this one gets free, swings back up, and the sear goes back up, pushed up by the spring that's inside it. And the sear has to come up and engage the firing pin. here. Now I've also ground the mating surface on the sear and on the firing pin to near mirror finish. That decreases the friction significantly on those, and then I'll apply some molybdenum grease to increase it furthermore. After polishing the sear, the trigger is now reasonably smooth, but sometimes there is a clear stop, and it's much harder than on other occasions. And now I found the reason. This metal piece here locks the trigger when there is no magazine inserted, and also at a fall when there is a G-force, and this is spring loaded. So to operate the trigger, this here needs to move below it. Let's see if we can do it now. And you see what happens. Sometimes when you pull it, it lifts. These components lift. And catches this one. Now it's exaggerated because the side panel is not on, but even with the side panel on, there is some room for this to lift. And apparently enough to hit this one. We'll take this one away to show you how it's supposed to operate. There, it snaps. And it so happens that the point where it snaps is virtually the same. It's just a fraction of a millimeter after it hits this one. And looking closely on this end, under a loop, I see that the corners are rounded. So this one has collided with that other metal piece on multiple occasions. The paint is missing there. So what I'll do is simply I'll round this a little bit more so it won't get stuck on it when trying to fire. Next thing is this piece that sits inside there. I've noticed that when pressing the trigger, it can be reasonably light trigger pull when you test to dry fire. And then when you put in a bullet and start for real, it's really hard. So what does that depend on? Well, it helps to look on the chafing. And here we see that the paint is worn off there, right on that corner there. It means it's touched the magazine. Right there, in the inside there, it touches the magazine. So we'll have to see if we can get rid of that problem. The rest is just a little bit of polishing and take away edges. And then inside here, on the inside where it meets the other part, they also tend to stick a little bit right there. So they need to be polished, both of them. I don't like the shape of this lower end of the trigger, so I'm gonna see if I can bend that with heat. With heat, I've now bent it a little bit so it's protruding less. It has an edge sticking out, but I will see how that will work. After a little bit more of warming and pressing, it now has this shape where the corner is definitely decreased. Now, assembled again with all the components in the trigger polished. Now it's smooth. Perfect. You don't need to make it lighter. Just take away the burrs and it will be super smooth.